waste any more of our time. That clock, I believe, is close to accurate now. It's been 3 minutes behind, and we're trying to adjust for it. I do believe that there might be one bill presentation, and it is not here at this time. I'll ask that question again here in a little bit. But for the members present, I'd like to open the hearing on House Bill 2085 and ask Kyle to give us a brief overview of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under current law, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment issues permits to individuals, businesses, federal agencies, and political subdivisions of the state for the discharge of sewage and also the extension of sewer systems. One thing to note, probably in the title of the bill, it should be something broader than just livestock. But currently, permits that require a fee expire up to 5 years after they are issued. The bill would allow permits to instead expire within 10 years after they are issued. House Bill 2085 would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move forward with, let's see, we have proponent testimony from Tom Stiles with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Tom Stiles. I'm Director of the Bureau of Water, Kansas Department of Health and Environment. As Kyle's just laid out, this is a very simple revision of existing statute. Every wastewater facility in Kansas is permitted by KDHE. Those that discharge receive actually 2 permits. One is the National Pollution Elimination Discharge Permit that's authorized under the Federal Clean Water Act. And jointly with that, we place a state water pollution control. So a discharger basically gets a dual or a joint permit there. We have a number of non-discharging facilities as well. Those don't fall under the Clean Water Act. Those are permitted strictly by KDHE with our state water pollution control. In both cases, in all cases, permits have always run 5 years in length. There's been a national movement within Congress among the utilities and urban public works to prod Congress to alter the Clean Water Act to allow for permits, their discharging permits, to go up to 10 years in length. In anticipation of that, and in recognition of our own situation, we are proponents of House Bill 2085 that would allow us to extend permits out to as long as 10 years in length. Now, if this bill becomes law, it's only applicable to those state facilities that do not discharge right now. Until Congress acts and modifies the Clean Water Act to allow in kind 10-year permits, we're just restricted to our state facilities there. If Congress does make that move, this law allows us to be nimble enough to quickly incorporate that length of permit within our discharging permits as well. The bill basically does 2 things. On our side, it allows us to stretch out certain facilities out farther in length. That basically lessens our work burden and our work queue in renewing permits and works toward reducing any backlogs that we potentially have, allowing my staff to work on more complex facilities and their permits, and leaving very simple facilities with 10-year permits out for another day. On the local scene, for those facilities, towns that will have a 10-year permit, it basically gives them some regulatory certainty that this is the rules that they'll have to follow with their facility over the next decade or so, and they don't have to basically make 2 trips, 2 applications to us in any given 10-year time span as well. And again, to reiterate, until Congress acts, 2085 would only be applicable for our state permitted facilities that do not discharge there. I think that's our summary, and we again stand in support of this bill moving out of committee and onto the floor. I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Any questions from the committee? Representative Pickard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Tom, can you tell us how many facilities in Kansas would be affected by this change?
Potentially, and it's a good point to also raise is that this isn't automatically 10 years. It allows the agency discretion to go up to 10 years. For facilities that have had a issue with their performance, we wouldn't allow for that because we'd want to stay on top of them. For very complex type of systems, we would basically say things move or are too dynamic, we would do that. But as it stands right now, we have 490 state-only non-discharging permits. We have about 845 discharging facilities and permits there that are governed by the federal Clean Water Act and its NPDES permit.
May I ask another question? Okay. So will this affect fee income by changing this? How are fees paid?
Currently, fees are paid annually, so any given 5-year permit, that facility pays 5 years of the fees. This won't change that at all. We will still collect, assess, and collect annually those fees.
Okay, and then how often, what's the workload for inspecting these? You know, how many a year?
Our environmental field services and our district offices, it's a function of what type of facility it is. If it's a large facility like a Topeka's wastewater plant, it's inspected annually. Smaller ones, let's say like Ogden or something like that, would be basically twice in 5 years. For these small ones, it's once every 5 years that they would be inspected.
So like of the total number, I mean, do you, 50% or, you know?
20%
Okay.
of the facilities are in any given year because we set up our inspection schedule to basically cover everybody within a 5-year path. So any given year, about 20% of the facilities fall under our inspection schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I guess I have a couple. Is there somewhat of a backlog within your department on inspections at this time?
On inspections, a little bit. On permit reissuance, yes, around probably 80 permits there. They tend to be the industrial permits, which are more complex than the municipal permits there. This bill would allow us the simple industrial, commercial, municipal facilities could basically be pushed off out of the queue for us to do that, and we could continue to winnow that down. I will say that with that backlog and with us being fully staffed within our permitting section, we have knocked that backlog down by 50% over the past year.
Good. How do we compare with other states as far as time frame on the permits? Because I think there's a difference between the states trying to comply with the the EPA rules.
Every state has some level of backlog. Some states go into it in greater depth. Certainly the states running around, bordering us, they all have varying degrees of how they process all of them have some level of backlog. All of them would support something like this. In fact, the Association of our Clean Water Administrators, my counterparts, ran a survey a year or two ago to address the national initiative. Of the 41 states or so that were surveyed, all of them were in favor of this latitude, but none of them were in favor of making it automatically a mandated 10-year type of thing. So we all have our own way of dealing with the permits, and we work our way through it, but we all have the same issues, especially as more expectations come down from EPA.
And as you mentioned earlier, if you felt there was a need to issue a permit for a shorter time frame due to past performance or risk, you're able to do that. So all we're doing is changing the maximum on these small ones from 5 years to 10.
That's correct.
And you can use your discretion in cases where it's necessary to have a shorter interval.
Right. And we also have the safety valve that all our permits have reopener clauses. So if someone has a 10-year permit and all of a sudden goes off the rails and has poor performance, we can go back in and reopen their permit to address the issues that they all of a sudden they're confronted with.
Any further questions? Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify what you just said, so that would be based on a complaint from some place that would reopen that that you just addressed,
Or about a complaint potentially, but we never act on the permit based on a complaint. We send our people out to inspect the facility, see how it's conforming with the expectations under the permit. Based on what we see there, we work toward trying to bring them back into compliance. Depending on the complexity of the performance issue, sometimes we need to basically then reopen the permit to allow them a pathway to get back into compliance with the law. That's one way. The other way is that all these facilities collect data on the quality of the wastewater that they discharge. If we see data that are showing that the treatment system is not performing the way it should have and for that type of facility, then we step in to work with that facility to try to say, what do we need to do to modify the process to bring you back into compliance?
So, Mr. Chairman, to follow up, so that's based on their initial permit and what they were allowed to do with that initial permit. Is that
Exactly
correct?
right. When they get a permit, that basically establishes the rules of how they're supposed to operate. It also provides them with a shield that if something happens out in, well, in your case, the Ark River, if Garden City is basically adhering to the conditions of their permit, we don't go back on Garden City saying, you're to blame for this issue happening there. That doesn't happen because you complied with the permit.
Because I'm, just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman, because I'm empathetic to staff workload and so forth, but I think there's some heartburn extending it from 5 years up to 5 years versus, up to 10 years versus 5 years. And you've addressed most of that in my mind, and I appreciate your answers to the question.
We will not be cavalier in just handing out 10-year permits. It'll basically be a system that has shown a steadfast record of performance and is a relatively simple process that isn't likely to change over the course of the next 10 years in the way they handle their wastewater.
Representative Sywert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had several people contact me on this. Could you give me an example of, maybe you said and I don't understand or remember, but allowing pollution control unit systems. Can you give me some examples of what that is?
It ranges from lagoons.
Okay.
Hold on,
Okay.
non-discharging lagoons that hold everything and everything is lost by evaporation. Discharging lagoons that hold it for 120 days and then have a discharge into water of the state. And then you step up toward mechanical plants that run through a treatment train to basically treat, biologically and chemically treat the wastewater before it's discharged into.
Okay, so you're like a small town wastewater treatment facility.
Sure, and
Okay,
which most of them tend to run with lagoons and all that.
Yes.
It's just a matter of
Yeah.
where they're located as to whether they're discharging or not.
That would include cattle and livestock also?
You know, this whole initiative came about because of public works initiatives across the country in there. But there's no reason that this law doesn't apply to small animal operations that our Bureau of Environmental Field Services also permits.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no further questions, I commend you for having a full employment and the backlog being worked down tremendously. Thank you for your testimony, Tom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Are there any further proponent testimonies? Seeing none, are there any neutral testimonies? Seeing none, I do believe we have one written opponent, and I'll direct the members of the committee. That is currently in your file. Comes from Matthew Steele, a private citizen. That came out on our initial minutes that testimony went with a different bill. It's actually pertaining to the 2085 bill, so it's in your folder and you have that. Please review that. Are there any other comments on House Bill 2085? Seeing none, I declare this hearing closed on 2085. We will open a hearing on House Bill 2112 and ask Kyle to give us a brief overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under current law, the Secretary of Health and Environment has established a certification program for operators of water supply systems and wastewater treatment facilities. The statutory fee for each individual examination is currently set at an amount not to exceed $25. Under Section 1 of the bill, the maximum amount would be changed to the cost of an individual operator certification exam. Additionally, the bill would repeal KSA 654506, which currently allows the Secretary to accept the successful completion of a correspondence course of instruction in lieu of classroom instruction. House Bill 2112 would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Any questions for Kyle? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you, Kyle. We have a group of proponents. Looks like we'll start with Kate Miller from Kansas Municipal Utilities. Welcome.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Katie Miller. I'm the Director of Water Services for Kansas Municipal Utilities. Kansas Municipal Utilities is the statewide member association for publicly owned utilities across the state. KMU supports House Bill 2112. The current operator examination fee of $25, which was established in the 1970s, must be lifted to meet but not exceed operator examination fees moving forward. This necessary and welcome change will enable operators to utilize current, relevant, standardized, quality control, and accessible exams, resulting in more individuals passing those operator certification exams. Water utility operators are professional individuals, and they impact public health of every community member in the area in which they live. These individuals strive to be well-educated, well-trained, and certified at the highest levels necessary, not only to ensure their own competency, but to ensure compliance and sustainability of their utilities and their communities served. Listing this fee is a key step in maintaining that standard of excellence in operator certification. Thank you for the opportunity to share our support for 2112, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Any questions for Katie? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is necessarily for you or just for anyone, but isn't this the same bill that we heard last year and passed out of the House? And is it, what reason, or do we know why they didn't get passed and signed into law last year?
Correct. This was a portion of the bill located in 2633. It did pass last year.
Representative Pickert.
You're right, it did pass the House, and it didn't get a hearing in the Senate. It was toward the end of the session, and yeah.
Any further questions? Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Next, we have Wendy Stark with the Kansas League of Municipalities. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Wendy Stark with the League of Kansas Municipalities, and there are some new faces in this room today, so I'd like to just talk a little bit about the League of Kansas Municipalities. We are a membership organization of more than 550 of our 625 cities. We provide services such as advocacy today to our members, as well as many other services. One of the things that we do each year is towards the late summer, we start meeting with our members to develop a statement of municipal policy. This is something that goes on through the summer and into the fall, and all of our members then vote on our statement of municipal policy. And I bring that up because we believe that House Bill 2112 supports some of our legislative priorities. One of the things that our members believe is that access to water is paramount for the growth and viability of communities. And then when we look further into our water, we support changes to the statutory language, increasing the funding stability for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment's Public Water Supply Supervision Program. And we also support improved certification programs that align necessary skill sets for real-world water and wastewater system operation with the content of the corresponding exams. We support review of water and wastewater certification to ensure validity and reliability. We encourage contracting and collaboration to help utilities acquire the knowledge, skills, abilities, and certifications needed to effectively serve our ratepayers. And again, House Bill 2112, eliminating this $25 fee and capping this at what it costs to actually administer the exams aligns with our principles, and we support this. One other thing, I think we can all agree that when this $25 fee was established in the 1970s, prices for services were a little bit lower than they are today. I think we can all agree that has risen, and our members support the certification fee being at $25 being eliminated and capping it at that cost. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions, and we do ask that when you vote this out of committee, that you vote this, recommend it favorably for passage. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, we have John Gilroy with the Kansas Section American Water Works.
Yes, thank you for your time this morning. John Gilroy, Chairman of the Kansas Section American Water Works Association. So just a brief statement about who we are. We're a group of Kansas water professionals of all utilities, shapes and sizes across the state, as well as consulting firms and other professional water entities. So our board held a special session yesterday to discuss this bill and see if we had any position. The outcome of that was me coming forward today, and we wanted to voice our support also of removing the testing fee cap, and we really see this as a needed step in the modernization of water operator exams. As some of the other folks have stated, these exam fees have been stagnant since the 1970s. We believe it's unrealistic to think that the cost of those exams haven't changed over the last 50 years. But I did also want to talk about the process that led us here. What I found from our group is that we had members of our organization that were participants in a collaborative workshop process with KDHE to guide us to this place. They were in agreement that these updates are needed to modernize the water exam program. What they sent me was a list of participants, and those representatives included people from KDHE, Kansas AWWA, Kansas Rural Water, and the League of Kansas Municipalities, among others. We also, in our discussion, talked about that the current exams are very dated, and that is a challenge. I did spend 11 years working in an operating utility, and it is a challenge for employees taking these exams when they're studying materials that don't necessarily align with current treatment practices. So by raising or removing this cap, it'll allow KDHE to go to a standardized testing platform that's more peer-reviewed and up-to-date with current treatment standards. I think the platform that I understand KDHE is looking at moving to has already been adopted in what I understand to be 20 other states. That platform will also improve reciprocity. That'll allow both our state people, if they were to move, their operator certification becomes more valuable. And we also, when we have people come in to the state of Kansas, we'd be able to bring in their licensure without having to re-examine them by going to a more standardized platform. I look at this, the water operator field is not a big glamorous field, but it is critical to all the communities across the state of Kansas. In Kansas AWWA, we support KDHE increasing this exam fee to give people the opportunity to enter this field that's critical to every community across the state. With that, I'll stand for any questions that you all might have for me.
Thank you. Representative Pickard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have any idea what the shortage of certified water operators is in Kansas?
Oh, that's a very good question. I can't speak to the quantity, but I know that so I no longer work at a utility, but when I did, we typically were not able to find people with experience. We trained people from the ground up. I know that smaller utilities in particular, we were fortunate. I used to work at the city of Olathe for 11 years, and we had tenured staff that could help train these people, and we would build them from the ground up. We would be stressed out, I guess. I don't know of a more eloquent way of saying it, when we would start to diminish that tenured population, because you can only build people so fast. But there is a lack of people across the state. I know in the smaller communities, sometimes they have a single operator covering multiple communities. And access to exams has been an issue. Having it going through KDHE, they offer limited sessions that people can sit for exams. Going to a more standardized platform will give more ready access and more opportunity. But it is something we are constantly facing, is trying to train people. I think the utility organizations across the state try and cross-train so that way we can help bring each other up. So not a direct answer, but there is a shortage. It is something we're constantly fighting, is how do we bring more people into the water industry? We're out of sight, out of mind, and how do we bring those people up to be competent?
Thank you. It's my understanding that the EPA requires drinking water operations to have a certified water operator. Is that right?
That is correct, and it's, it really relates to the criticality of the protection of human health. I mean, I often think that we're the first line of defense in keeping people's health safe. My brother's a doctor. I joke sometimes that, a surgeon isn't very good if they don't have a good water supply to wash their hands. And we also have to have good water to drink. Obviously, we all wake up every morning and assume that the water coming out of our tap is going to be good. I know the larger municipality regulations better. For the city of Olathe, they had to have a Class 4 operator that was responsible for the operation of their system. I think further steps that KDHE are considering that we also believe are valid are looking at a certified operator who oversees the piping system in town, because sometimes the person who oversees the treatment isn't necessarily that piping expert and vice versa. But it's a high level of responsibility that everyone assumes it's there until it's not. And that's when, you see the national headlines where people are like, well, what went wrong? Well, the folks that we all hoped were taking care of things weren't. And that's why we need to make sure we have good water professionals in the background.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Kathy Tucker-Vogel with KDHE. Welcome, Kathy.
So, good morning, Chairman Minix and members of the committee, and especially Representative Pickard for ushering this bill through again for us this year. I want to thank you for holding this hearing this morning. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment supports House Bill 2112, which will allow us to charge the actual cost for a water or wastewater operator certification exam. And it also repeals KSA 65-4506, which removes the correspondence course in lieu of classroom instruction to meet our certification requirements. Both of these items were on the bill that you heard last year, so we're happy to be back and try again this year. KDHE currently has 5 levels of certification for drinking water and 5 levels of certification for wastewater operators. Classifications are based upon the type of treatment that's used and the population that's served, and also in the case of drinking water, the water source, whether it be groundwater, surface water, groundwater under the influence of surface water. So that impacts the level of classification that's required to operate a system. Each classification has a separate exam, so we have between water and wastewater 10 different exams that we administer, and individuals must pass the exam with a score of 70% or higher to become certified. Eliminating the $25 fee, the cap on the fee, will allow us to provide a variety of exam formats and expand the opportunities for more exam locations. For example, the wastewater certification program is currently exploring the possibility of providing exams through community colleges through a pilot program that we're currently in discussions with Johnson County Community College and Allen County Community College. And those would be web-based exams that the community colleges would proctor for us. However, the cost to do that exceeds $25. So we will be unable to move forward without removal of the cap on the exams. The drinking water certification program, as you've kind of heard with John's testimony, is currently reviewing our options to use a third-party vendor for exam development and administration. And the costs of those exams runs from $46 to $104. And that's based on the format of the exam, whether we do paper copy, electronic web-based exams, and the use of proctors, whether KDHE continues to proctor the exams regardless of whether they're web-based or paper, or whether we use a third party like the community colleges. So the costs vary depending upon the options that we select. And I would just say we don't have to select a single option. We can use all of the above, depending on what fits the needs of the operator community. And if the fee is lifted, the ceiling on the fee is lifted, the exam fees are set our regulation development process. So we would then go back to our advisory committee to discuss the fees and the various options that might be on the table. And then all regulations, of course, go through a public comment process. So it wouldn't be KDHE just deciding this is what we're going to do without input from the operator community. And I want to talk just specifically about drinking water, since that's my side of the program, is the public water supply section. And the quality of the test questions and the ability to customize exams for the diversity of the water treatment systems that we have in Kansas has hampered the education and training of our next generation of operators. Water systems, as I mentioned earlier, include groundwater, surface water, groundwater under the influence of surface water, and distribution-only systems. So we have many public water supply systems in the state, the smaller ones, that all they have is a distribution system. They are purchasing treated water from a neighboring larger public water supply system or from a public wholesale water supply district. So there is a need to put some emphasis on distribution system operations in the state of Kansas. And the populations served by these various water supplies range from maybe a dozen people to over 400,000. So broad spectrum of citizens that our water systems serve. And in our discussions with the utility associations of the state, the consensus is that streamlining the testing process will improve the quality of operators certified to run public water supply systems, as well as improvements to the ongoing education and training of the operator workforce. Removing the cap will allow KDHE the flexibility to utilize external services to provide customized, consistent examinations for operators by eliminating the constraint of the capped fees that are inadequate to cover those costs. Finally, the option of utilizing a correspondence course in lieu of classroom training has never been developed by KDHE. So classroom training and education by individuals that have experienced the nuances of system operations are most effective at raising the technical skills of water and wastewater operators rather than using a static material that you're just reading on a correspondence course. We believe that the change brought about by House Bill 2112 provides the flexibility to ensure KDHE can maintain a strong operator certification program. Just to restate it, we stand in support of Bill 2112 and urge its passage. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate efficiency and streamlining government services as much as we can, and I really I like the removal of fees, but not when they're going up usually, when we have a cap on there. Being from Northwest Kansas and a lot of very, very small rural communities with, you know, I'm from Weston, Kansas. Our town is maybe 150 if you're counting cats and dogs too.
Yeah, so you're one of those dozens of people.
Yes. The concerns that I'm hearing from a lot of my smaller communities are with the removal of this fee, they're worried about the increased requirements in these trainings that they might have to be certified now and study and learn things that they will never actually use. I mean, they're operating very small, simple systems. They're concerned about that. I know that might not be the intent, but, you know, several years ago, I know it has nothing to do with water, but we went through a problem several years ago with CDL training for entry-level driver training. Had people that could go to their local community or maybe within a half hour or so receive that training. Now they have to go from Goodland and Colby, they have to go to maybe Kansas City or Wichita to get that training. I just want to understand from your perspective, what kind of things can you do at KDHE to ensure that these smaller operators, number one, aren't having to pay for more certifications than they're really going to be using? And is that training going to be readily available without having to come to Topeka or different places?
So there's a lot to unpack there, so I'll do my best here. So this goes a little bit beyond the discussion of the fees into how we intend to operate the program moving forward. So let me just talk a little bit about that with your permission, Chairman Minix. Okay. So we have convened a work group, started in 2019, to help us develop and revise our regulations. Because we were hearing from the regulated community, from the operators, that our exams, especially for the smaller systems, you know, we had surface water questions on exams that only groundwater operators were taking, but there's no other option to customize the exams as we have them now. So a groundwater operator, if he's taking a Class 2 certification exam, will have to be familiar with operations of a surface water system. So I think that's what you're speaking to, and that is how it is now. So our goal was to try and customize and fit our certification classifications to better align with what's actually happening out there in the operator world, in the water and wastewater world. So when we looked at changing the classifications, yes, it is true, we are asking for, or talking to the committee, our advisory committee, about including a distribution system certification, but also focusing on those small systems that may be a groundwater system only, that all they do is disinfect, which is probably the case for your community, that's all they're focusing on. And if you're under 500, which your community is, you don't have to have a distribution system certification. You only have to have the certification to operate your small groundwater system. So for the most part, Any system under 500 won't be required to have a distribution system certification. So the concern about having to have multiple certifications for these very small communities has never been on the table. That's never been something we've discussed. Going to a standardized exam will also allow us to focus more on providing training that is applicable to the exam classifications rather than making sure, administering the exams. The exams are standardized. The questions will be easier for us to develop need to know across the board for all water systems. So I think, did I answer your question?
Yes, very good, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Pickert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Kathy, my understanding is right now there's a challenge with the pass-fail rate for operators taking the exam, the current exam. Do you have any current information about that?
I just happen to have that,
Okay.
Representative Pickert. So let me get my notes out here. So I did look up some information about our calendar year 2024 exams. So during calendar year 2024, we offered 8 exam opportunities across the state. KDHE has 6 districts, and we offer at least 1 exam in every district per year. And really on the eastern side of the state, since we have more operators, more public water supply systems, sometimes we'll do more than 1 in a district. But we did offer in each district last year. So the pass rates for drinking water exams, I'm going to give you the total. If you're interested in the specific classifications, I have that information, but in the interest of time, I think just providing you the overall rate, pass rate for drinking water exams was 68.47%. So just as an example, the small system, the pass rate was 75.43. It's when we get to the higher classifications, the larger utilities, that we see the pass rates start to drop off a little bit. As an example, the classification for 4s was 64.51. So you can see that it drops off quite a bit from the small system up to the larger systems. And on the wastewater side, the overall pass rate for all classes was 68%. And just so you have a comparison, the wastewater small system was 80.71. And for the large class 4s, it was 63.71. So you see there's a consistency there, both on water and wastewater on the pass rates.
Do you have the total number of people who took the exam?
The total number, yes. So the total number of drinking water exams that we administered in 2024 was 539. And the wastewater exam total for all classes was 440.
And of the level 1 drinking water certification, what percentage passed?
The class 1s was 68.83.
So the way it is now, somebody from Western Kansas could travel quite a ways to take the exam. It's mileage, it's a place to stay, it's food, so the cost is way more than $25, and then not pass. I mean,
yeah, that's certainly happens. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So one thing I was going to mention is, my testimony, I mentioned that we're doing the pilot study with the community colleges. We're not including Seward County in the pilot study because we want the pilot study to be a little closer to home. So if we need to travel to talk to the community colleges, we'll be able to do that. But we have had some very preliminary discussions with Seward County Community College, which then would allow operators to take the web-based exams closer to home instead of waiting for KDHE to come out to the Southwest District to do the exams. I just want to reiterate, None of this is possible with the current $25 fee.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If someone fails the exam, can they take the exam as many times as they want to pass it, as long as they pay for the cost of the exam? And how often could they take the exam?
Yes, so they can take the exam multiple times. If they score below 50%, then we require them to get some additional training before they sit for another exam. Because clearly, if their score is 50% or below, they need to do a little extra study and training before they sit for another exam. But yes, they can take it multiple times in a year.
And how often would they have the opportunity to take an exam?
So they can take it whenever we are offering an exam. So let me give you an example. We have an annual operators school that's held in Lawrence every year, which I will just tout our program. We've done that school for, I think this year will be 104. So we've been doing this a long time. And then the AWWA conference is in August. So early August is the annual school. Later on in August, first part of September, is the AWWA conference. And sometimes that's held in Topeka. So if they fail the exam in Lawrence the first part of August, they could go to Topeka and take the exam again. So there's no time constraint.
Representative Pickert for a second time.
Okay. So, oh gosh, you made me lose my train of thought. Oh, I know. Okay, so for somebody getting a Class 1 water certification, which the EPA requires for every municipality that has a drinking water system and some rural water systems, right?
Every public water supply system in the state of Kansas is required to be under the supervision of a certified operator. It doesn't matter what size, what type, everybody has to have a certified operator.
Okay, so they first of all, they have to have a year of on-the-job training plus some other classes before they can sit for the exam. Is that correct?
Yeah, for Class 1. So it's dependent upon the classification that we're talking about. So small systems is 6 months. Class 1s is a year. I believe Class 2 is also a year. And then 3s and 4s are 2 years.
Okay, so they're investing quite a bit of time and energy to be a certified operator. And if they're not passing their test, they may be out of a job or not getting a raise, plus the community is not getting what they need. So it is a big deal to pass these.
Yes, it is a very big deal. And I don't want to lose sight of why we have certified operators for drinking water systems. The driving force and the primary reason is public health protection. I'll kind of follow on John's comments. Drinking water touches everyone in your communities every day. So if something goes wrong at a drinking water system, treatment is not appropriate, or they make a mistake in the treatment, have a chemical feed wrong, whatever the case may be, that has the potential to affect the health and the life of every citizen in that community. So we talk about, the exams and the tests and the burden and all of those things. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact of why this is required and why we're doing it. And it's fundamental. It's public health protection. So you can tell I'm a little passionate about that.
I want to be totally transparent with this committee. 10.5 months ago, I requested a legislative post-audit limited scope audit of this particular program. And that will be released to their committee here in the Capitol on Tuesday.
February 3rd, yes.
Monday the 4th.
No, the 3rd. Monday, it's the 3rd. Whatever day the 3rd is, it's on the 3rd.
The 3rd's a Monday then. I've been waiting for that for a little while, and I will not work this bill until the committee has an opportunity to look at that. We do meet on Tuesday with several GMDs. I will not take action on this bill until Thursday, the 6th, I believe. So I want you guys to all be aware of this. And we've been talking about this issue for far more than a year, for quite some time. Legislative post audit tells me that you folks worked with them, and I appreciate that very much. It was not meant to be punitive in any way, but I just wanted a third party to look at this and see if there's some areas that we can improve for the future. And we'll see what their recommendations are coming up next Monday. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
So I will just add, working with legislative post-audit was a very positive experience. So, you know, when we first saw that, I thought, oh, you know, you hear about legislative post-audit. It was a very positive experience, and we were happy to cooperate and provide the information. And I will just say, I did talk to the folks over at legislative post-audit when I was preparing my comments today, because the report is confidential until it's released. And so they asked me not to share any information with you. So the pass rates that I shared with you today are pass rates that we generated in-house just yesterday. So we didn't divulge anything that would be in the post-audit report.
Thank you. Like you said, legislative post-audit doesn't have to mean it's punitive or a problem. We're all working together to improve this situation. That's what this committee and KDHE and everybody sitting out there in the audience, and I think post-audit will show that next week. Thank you.
Like I said, it was a very good experience. So we were happy to have that information shared with all of you. So thank you for requesting it.
Thank you, Kathy. Are there any more oral proponents out there? Seeing none, I want the committee to be aware that we have 3 more written proponents. Randy Frazier, the city manager of Arkansas City. Kurt Bookout, the former director of public utilities. From where? Malvern. And Fred Jones, the water resources manager of Garden City, Kansas. Are there any neutral testimonies? Seeing none. Under the opponent category, we have 1 oral from Darren Martin with Kansas Rural Water. Welcome, Darren.
I'm sorry. Good morning, committee. It's the first time I've ever done this, so I'm a little bit excited. So I'm Darren Martin. I'm the Assistant General Manager of the Kansas Rural Water Association. And KRWA appreciates the opportunity to come before the committee to discuss this issue that will, as all the conferees have said, will affect every single public water supply in this state, including our 254 rural water and public wholesale members and our 468 cities that are members of our association. Our association opposes House Bill 2112 because of the negative changes KDHE is going to enact when it passes. So KRWA and its 26 staff members provide technical assistance and training and support to public water and wastewater systems across the state. Last year, I personally worked with operators from Elwood all the way down to Elkhart. We also administer the largest operator training program in the state, including 3 training sessions that are going on as we speak, one in Newton to do lift station training, which is where I was scheduled to be before early this week when we heard about this bill. And today we're also doing 2, a separate water exam training and a wastewater exam training up in Hayes. They're having an exam in Hayes tomorrow. And so KRWA goes out the day before all these exam sites and we put up this small system of Class 1 training. And so if you allow me to, I'd like to take partial credit for KRWA for those passing numbers going up. We really focus on that with our organization, especially small systems and Class 1 operators. In 2024, more than 4,000 operators attended training sessions for KRWA, sponsored at 134 different sessions, including our annual conference, which is among the largest in the United States. So as conferees have said, if this bill passes, KDHE is going to purchase a national exam. And because the exams do not incorporate treatment and distribution questions in the same exam, KDHE will add a new distribution certificate. And while it won't affect perhaps it won't affect operators in populations under 500. There's a lot of 501 and plus population cities in this state. So all of those cities that are larger than 501 will have to have an operator that's certified in both water treatment and water distribution, and they will have to maintain a wastewater certification in order to operate the wastewater system. And operators don't only need to pass these exams, but they also have to maintain continuing education credits for all three of those licenses, which will also add to the cost. So the national exams also do not cover the current small system classification that KDHE uses for hundreds of small systems and systems that purchase treated water. So those systems still may be required to take the KDHE exam, and KDHE will still have to issue those, and there won't be an electronic option for those systems with the national exam. They'll still have to travel to, this year the opportunities for exams are in Hayes, Wichita, Newton, McPherson, Lawrence, and Topeka. So KRWA continues to oppose eliminating this fee, and instead we propose a statutory advisory committee to provide input to the agency, review operator exam questions to make sure they're relevant and applicable to water systems and Kansas water operators. We also propose that this new committee make recommendations to do electronic testing for small system operators so that if they don't live near I-70 or I-35. We suggest the Information Network of Kansas, or INC, to look into this service. INC provides electronic testing for a lot of other disciplines, and we're certain they could do this for water and wastewater operators as well. The committee could review these exams to separate surface water and groundwater questions, which the committee that was mentioned that formed in 2019 at the behest of KRWA, that's what the main focus of this whole committee was from our standpoint, is to separate surface water questions and groundwater questions. That one move would greatly increase the passing rates, especially for small groundwater systems that operate nitrate removal plants, which require that they have a higher level of certification, and usually those operators have to take exams that were originally designed for surface water operators. As far as that committee goes, I was not on the committee, even though I worked for KDHE in 2019 when the committee was formed. I'm a Class 4 water operator, got my start in El Dorado. And it's lonely for operators in here because other than me and Mr. Shore on the back row and perhaps Mr. Gilroy, there's no other certified operators here talking today. That committee had 23 members, had 9 certified operators. 7 of those operators were from utilities, and the utilities were Garden City, Wichita, El Dorado, another operator from Wichita, City of Enterprise, City of Clay Center, and Kansas City Board of Public Utilities. So those are all very large systems that put input on that committee. The other 2 certified operators were one KRWA staff member and then a KDHE staff member who doesn't work for the agency anymore. He's at a utility now. There were 9 KDHE staff from the water and wastewater sides, 2 from the Department of Commerce, 1 from EPA, and the rest were KMU, KRWA. We don't feel like that advisory committee gave a good view of what small systems need out of this program. And the KDHE wastewater certification program are reviewing exams now. I can't get a lot of information from them. They won't tell me anything, but they've had 2 meetings and it sounds like they're making progress on these exams and reviewing these high-level exams. The cost of that review is the cost of agency time. Everybody else is volunteers on that committee. Nearly every Kansan is personally impacted daily by a water operator, as other conferees have stated. And most citizens in the state do not give operators a second thought, but Kansas Rural Water is those operators. That's who makes up our membership. We travel the state every day talking to operators. We know what they have to say. So we ask that you oppose this bill, which will add complications and cost to operators. Changing to the out-of-state exams is not going to magically create more operators, and we're not going to have a big influx of operators from out-of-state coming to work these systems in Kansas. The bottom line is that the proposed changes are mainly for the convenience of KDHE staff. Kansas Rural Water continues to offer to be a partner with KDHE, the way that we work with Kansas Water Office very well. We want to improve this program along with the rest of the stakeholders. And thank you for your time, and I'll take questions if you see appropriate.
Any questions for Darren? Representative Pickert?
Thank you, Darren, for your testimony. You did great for your first time. Yeah, well, for your 12th time or more. So, I wanted to, you brought up that the wastewater folks at KDHE have a work group of various certified operators that are going through the wastewater questions. And I did talk to the person from KDHE that is leading that group. And I can't remember if it's 8-ish, 10-ish people that are on the work group, but they are going through each question one at a time. They had just had their first, it was a day-long meeting, and they got through about a third of the questions. And so she anticipated that within 6 months, they would go through all of the questions. She said that she was surprised how many of the questions needed to be updated or a word changed to be more relevant, or, you know, that kind of thing. And then they plan to go ahead and start using the updated questions. So that's the wastewater side. Now, is it true that the EPA has more stringent requirements for drinking water?
Yes, so the drinking water side is regulated by EPA, where the wastewater operator certification program is managed by the state.
Yeah,
There's not
so-
federal requirements for that.
Yeah, so, okay, well, I just wanted to update you on that, and the whole committee to know that that is an option that's out there.
Any further questions? Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Darren, I would echo the response. You did a great job.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So no need to be nervous with this small group. My question is, and I noticed from the testimony out in my area, I've got proponents and I've got opponents in my area of the state. But to summarize, it appears to me, Darren, that the opposition that you bring to the table is based, first of all, on the exam being appropriate to the location or the size of the water system and so forth. And secondly, the unknown costs that it might bring to the people who are trying to get certified. Am I correct in the summary of that?
Yeah, that's correct. We would like test questions to be applicable to the operators and relevant to what their work experience are. And we don't feel like the current exams represent that.
And then the cost is of the exam?
Yeah, the cost changes. So last year, I think they said the cost was $125, and this year it's 114, maybe, she said. 104, 46 to 104. So that's the concern. We don't know what the cost is going to be going to the national exams, especially long-term. There's no control over that. It's a membership-based organization, so somebody from the state has to become a member, and then we pay for those exams.
And I appreciate the help you've given me in the past. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Darren.
Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Any further opponent oral testimony? Seeing none, I'll direct the committee's attention to written testimony only from Heath Austin, the mayor of Potwin, Steve Carmichael, City of Haven Public Works, Perry Smith, the superintendent of the Finney County Rural Water District, and Brandon Smith with Public Wholesale number 12 out of Melbourne. Oh, I do have an update on the proponents above. Kurt Bookout was actually from El Dorado. So, as I told the committee, we'll consider working this on Thursday, a week from now. I'm been trying to delay some of these things until we got legislative post audit and some of those things, and our timing is short. After today, we will actually have 4 more meeting time periods before turnaround, and 2 of those will be consumed with all the GMD messages. But at this time, I will go back to the beginning of our meeting and ask if there are any bill introductions. Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for being late, and I appreciate your willingness to reopen this point of the agenda. I would like to request RS number 0941 regarding the reorganization of water agencies and the creation of a Department of Natural Resources.
Okay. Are there any other bill introductions? Seeing none. I want to thank the committee and the audience. We apologize for being about 5 minutes late starting. There are a lot of things going on in this building. This meeting is adjourned.